morning and good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the APO Productivity Talk Series. I'm Kate Sugita, Head of Multi-Country Program Division 1, Program Directorate for Asian Productivity Organization, APO, and the moderator for today's speed talk. Our topic today is water management for climate-smart rice production and green productivity using Japan's JCM carbon credit scheme. Today's speed talk takes us on a journey into the water management for climate-smart rice production and the carbon credit scheme, recently being the key factors for climate change mitigation and food security in Japan, and even in Asia. Government of Japan now tries to disseminate AWD utilizing JCM scheme, such as in Philippines, which is a major recent milestone of joint credit mechanism in agriculture in the world. In this P-Talk, we introduce the details of the background of the carbon credit system. We would like to explore the possibility in APO member economies to utilize this system for disseminating climate-smart rice production. Today, we have a distinguished expert in the field of water management for climate-smart rice production, Dr. Kazunori Minamikawa, who is the Deputy Project Leader at JIRCAS, Japan International Research Center for Agricultural Sciences. He will guide us with today's theme, water management for climate-smart rice production and green productivity using Japan's JCM carbon credit scheme. Dr. Kazunori Minamikawa, welcome. How are you today?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to explain water management in rice field today. I would like to express my gratitude to APO and Mr. Sugita for giving me this good opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Minamikawa. So if you are ready, please start your presentation.
First, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Kazunori Minamikawa. I'm a Deputy Project Leader at JIRCAS. My research focuses on climate-smart rice production, especially greenhouse gas mitigation through water management in rice fields. I am interested not only in mitigation effects themselves, but also in how these practices can be scaled in practice, including their agronomic benefits and the possible role of carbon credit mechanisms in Asia. Based on this background, today I would like to share my perspective on water management, farmer adoption, and the role of Japan's JCM, or joint crediting mechanism. So my topics is as follows. First, I will discuss why water management matters in rice production, especially in relation to methane emissions. Then, I will explain why methane mitigation alone does not necessarily drive farmer adoption. After that, I will discuss what actually drives farmer adoption and how those motivations differ from carbon credit incentives. Finally, I will explain where Japan's JCM fits in this picture and how this approach may support wider diffusion in Asia.
Thank you very much for your introduction of yourself and summary of today's topics. So let's start our session along your today's topics. First of all, Dr. Minamikawa, why is water management important in rice production?
Yes, here I would like to briefly show what we mean by water management in rice fields. This figure illustrates three typical water management regimes, that is CF, AWD, and MIDI. First, CF, or continuous flooding, means that the field is kept flooded most of the time. Second, AWD, or alternate wetting and drying, means that the field is periodically allowed to dry and then reflooded. Third, MIDI refers to mid-season drainage followed by intermittent irrigation. AWD is typically managed based on water level thresholds, while MIDI is more closely linked to crop growth stages. The important point is that these are different ways of controlling the water regime in rice fields. And this difference matters because it affects not only methane emissions, but also crop growth, water use, and field management. So before moving to the next point, I would like you to keep in mind this basic picture of how water management differs in practice. Now, let me move to the next point, why water management matters in rice production. Rice paddies are an important source of methane emissions. Methane is mainly produced under anaerobic soil conditions, so the water regime has a strong influence on methane production and emission. This means that by changing how water is managed in the field, we can change the soil environment and reduce methane emission. Water management is especially important because it is often more practical than many other mitigation options. In many cases, it does not require a completely new farming system. Rather, it can be incorporated into routine field operations if suitable water control is possible. For that reason, water management is one of the key options for climate-smart rice production. In many cases, practices such as AWD and MIDI can reduce methane emission by around 50% compared to continuous flooding, although the exact effect depends on local conditions and management design. At the same time, water management is not only a climate measure, it also affects crop growth, root conditions, water use, and day-to-day field operations. In other words, when we discuss water management, we are not discussing only methane. We are also discussing issues that farmers care about directly, such as how to use water efficiency, how to manage the field more smoothly, and how to reduce production risk under local conditions. So, water management can generate both environmental value and direct on-farm benefits. This is why it fits well with the idea of green productivity. It connects climate action with the practical realities of rice production.
Thank you, Dr. Minamikawa. We were able to understand why water management matters in rice production for not only mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, but also crop growth and water saving. So next, why methane mitigation alone does not drive adoption.
Yes, methane mitigation is clearly important from the viewpoint of climate policy. However, it is often a weak adoption driver at the farm level. The reason is simple. The climate benefit is socially important, but it is often indirect, delayed, and not visible in farmers' daily decision making. For an individual farmer, reducing methane does not immediately appear as a concrete management benefit. So, even if a practice reduces methane, that alone does not mean that it will be widely adopted. Why is that the case? Because farm level decisions are usually based on practical benefits and risks. Farmers tend to focus on yield, income, labor requirement, and management feasibility. They also care about production risk, water availability, and whether the practice is easy to understand and apply under local conditions. So, mitigation effect alone rarely drives widespread adoption. In most cases, adoption requires a more direct and practical motivation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Minamikawa. I understand why methane mitigation alone does not motivate farmers so much. It is reasonable that farmers usually focus more on yield, income, and feasibility. So now I am curiously interested in how farmers are motivated to adopt this climate-smart rice production. What actually drives farmers' adoption?
Yes, in many cases, the strongest drivers are direct on-farm benefits. These may include better control of water, more stable yields, lower production risk, and easier field management. Depending on the situation, labor saving may also matter. These practical benefits are much closer to farmers' real decision than methane mitigation alone. That is why they often play a much larger role in actual adoption. This leads to an important point. There are two distinct pathways of diffusion. The first is farmer benefit driven diffusion, which is based on internal motivation such as yield, productivity, water control, or production stability. The second is credit driven diffusion, which is based on external incentives such as carbon credits, institutional support, and MRV system. MRV stands for monitoring, reporting, and verification. These two pathways operate through fundamentally different logics, so they should be distinguished, even though both can support scaling.
I began to well understand two distinct pathways of diffusion: farmer benefit-driven internal motivation and credit-driven external incentive. Thank you very much, Dr. Minamikawa. I guess it's time to listen to JCM scheme, right? I'm really eager to ask you to talk about JCM scheme, Dr. Minamikawa. How JCM, joint crediting mechanism, can support a wider diffusion in Asia.
So JCM is a bilateral carbon credit mechanism between Japan and partner countries. It quantifies emission reductions and shares the resulting credits between the two countries. In simple terms, JCM provides a framework that connects mitigation practices with carbon credit incentives. As I mentioned earlier, methane mitigation is socially important, but it is often weak as a direct farm level motivation. JCM helps address this gap. It turns climate benefit into something that can be recognized and rewarded within a policy and economic framework. In this sense, JCM supports the climate-driven pathway of adoption. At the same time, JCM does not replace farmer motivation. Rather, it adds a different type of incentive. It creates value for climate benefit, and it supports MRV, which is necessary to quantify and verify mitigation outcomes. Because of this, JCM can encourage adoption even where direct agronomic motivation alone is not enough. So, JCM should be understood as a complementary mechanism, not a substitute for farmer benefit-driven adoption. Japan's experience provides an important foundation for this discussion. Conventional mid-season drainage has long been practiced in Japanese rice cultivation. Building on this, improved drainage management has been explored to enhance methane mitigation. Here, the point is not simply to dry the field more strongly. Rather, the point is to design drainage more carefully with attention to timing, duration, and possible yield risk. So, this is really about better designed water management, not simply stronger drying. Japan has also accumulated practical experience through J-Credit, which is a domestic carbon credit scheme. This provides useful lessons on how to connect field management, climate benefit, and MRV in practice. The next step is to expand learning and implementation beyond a single country. Japan's experience is now being extended to international contexts. A major recent milestone was the approval of a JCM methodology for paddy water management in the Philippines in 2025. This is a pioneering case of a bilateral carbon credit methodology in the agriculture sector. In addition, APO has started supporting wider dissemination among member countries from 2026. So the direction is no longer only from Japan to one partner country. The larger goal is wider diffusion in Asia, and this wider scaling will still depend on two distinct pathways. Let me emphasize one key message here. Scaling requires two distinct pathways. Farmer benefits are internal motivation, while carbon credits are external incentives. These operate through different logics, so they should be treated separately. At the same time, both can be important for wider scaling. Let me conclude with four key messages. First, effective water management is a practical climate smart option for rice cultivation. Second, methane mitigation alone is rarely a strong adoption driver at the farm level. Third, Japan's JCM can provide an external incentive by turning climate benefit into institutional and economic value. And fourth, scaling requires two distinct pathways because farmer benefits and credit incentives operate through different logics. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this presentation has shown that water management is important not only as a mitigation measure, but also as a practical issue of productivity, incentives, and diffusion. Water management connects climate, productivity, and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you so
こちらは終わります。
much. Thank you so much, Dr. Minamikawa, for your insightful presentation. I fully understand that JCM supports the credit-driven pathway of adoption of methane mitigation rice production. It creates value for climate benefit and supports MRV. Also, I was impressed that Japan's experience is now being extended to international context. APO is an international organization which has been contributing to improving productivity in APO member economies. So this activity is fully suitable for the APO. So now I have a few questions to Dr. Minamikawa from your presentation. First, through the JCM scheme, what amount of money can farmers receive?
Yes, it's a bit difficult question, but the amount varies depending on the project design, methane reduction level, and carbon price. In many cases, the carbon revenue per farmer is relatively modest compared to total farm income. However, it can still be meaningful as an additional incentive, especially when aggregated over large areas. So the role of JCM is not to replace farmer income, but to provide an additional incentive linked to climate benefit.
Thank you very much for your detailed and thoughtful answers. Secondly, as for internal motivation for farmers, how much can this water management contribute to improving yield?
Yes, in many cases, water management can improve water use efficiency and sometimes increase yield. But the key point is not only yield increase. Farmers often value better control, reduced risk, and more stable production. So the incentive is a combination of water saving, risk reduction, and improved management rather than yield alone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Minamikawa, for your very useful insights. Do you have any final thoughts for your viewers?
Okay, so if I may add one final message, water management is not only a technical issue, it is also about how we design incentives, balance risks, and support farmers in real world conditions. Going forward, the key is to connect practical farm benefits with climate incentives in a realistic way. That is where approaches like the dual pathway can play an important role. Thank you.
We are grateful to our expert, Dr. Minamikawa, for this enlightening discussion of water management for climate-smart rice production and green productivity using Japan's JCM carbon credit scheme. We can well understand the scheme and the background. So thank you very much for joining us today. Viewers, we hope that this activity with support of government of Japan continue to explore the reducing greenhouse gas emission, sustainable rice production, and improving productivity. Furthermore, I hope that those efforts will be disseminated to other member economies positively, with the APO playing the vital role for implementing, and that this session has provided valuable insights into climate-smart farming issue and its potential to revitalize sustainable food production globally. Thank you for joining us today for the APO Productivity Talk series. Please continue to watch the APO YouTube channel for the insightful discussions. Stay tuned, stay productive, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Goodbye for now.